When I was a kid, the disaster we worried about most was a nuclear war. That's why we had a barrel like this down in our basement, filled with cans of food and water. When the nuclear attack came, we were supposed to go downstairs, hunker down, and eat out of that barrel. Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic. Let's look at Ebola. I'm sure all of you read about it in the newspaper. Lots of tough challenges. I followed it carefully through the case analysis tools we use to track polio eradication. And as you look at what went on, the problem wasn't that there was a system that didn't work well enough. The problem was that we didn't have a system at all. In fact, there are some pretty obvious key missing pieces. We didn't have a group of epidemiologists ready to go who would have gone, seen what the disease was, see how far it had spread. The case reports came in on paper. It was very delayed before they were put online, and they were extremely inaccurate. We didn't have a medical team ready to go. We didn't have a way of preparing people. Now, Médecins Sans Frontières did a great job orchestrating volunteers, but even so, we were far slower than we should have been getting the thousands of workers into these countries.
Which countries do you think we should be looking to for models that work, and can we apply those models to a larger country like the United States? So, many people say Italy and Korea, yes, have their numbers, but they can't necessarily be applied to America. Is that true or not? Or is there a model that does seem to work and should be followed for everybody?
Well, countries have differences. South Korea did get a medium-sized infection, but then they used testing, enforced quarantine, contact tracing, and really bent the curve. South Korea ramped up their testing and did the prioritization, so you're getting those tests back quickly. We understand what needs to be done here. It's going to be very painful, but taking the pain early means there's a lot less pain, both medically and economically, than if we dilly-dally and wait until every town has big numbers before we react. And so there's models like South Korea who took advantage of February, built up the testing capacity, and they were able to contact trace, and their infections have gone down even without the type of shutdown that, because we're late, we're having to do. We should be able to get to a South Korea type prioritized testing thing within a few weeks. It is tempting because if you got there early, South Korea did not have to do the extreme shutdown because they did such a good job on testing. Testing is the key thing. South Korea did that in this massive way that everybody should learn from. That's what the exemplars, like some of the work in China and South Korea, are telling us. Now, as you get to poorer countries, the difficulty of doing the isolation, where you live close by in slums, where you have to go out every day to get your food, it is going to be much, much tougher. And so, by summer, I think the rich countries that have been competently led on this will not have to go back into shutdown. And from the disease point of view, they'll avoid very large numbers of deaths. And so in that phase, we still will have a challenge with the developing countries.
Bill Gates wants to work with President Moon Jae-in to develop treatments and vaccines for COVID-19. In a rare phone meeting, the Microsoft co-founder lauded South Korea for supplying virus testing kits to developing countries, while President Moon voiced anticipation for more collaboration in providing assistance to other parts of the world. Kim Min-ji shares with us what was discussed.
President Moon Jae-in and Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates have agreed to step up their cooperation toward developing vaccines and treatments for COVID-19. South Korea's top office said that the two talked on the phone for 25 minutes on Friday, at the request of Gates, who is also the co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the world's largest private charitable organization, and has also been helping the international community in the fight against the pandemic.